dress flip-flops on, singing to that highway song. Got a little naive smile, the kind that drives you out. Nothing like playing with fire, brings forward a life. Be with the fuse you light, you're good, you're dynamite. You made my day when you walked into town beside me, whispered with your eyes, let's go. You made me say, what's your name, girl, you're lonely. Can I call you if I ever go down this road? And I can't seem to find the thing I
The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
14:20 in the morning, 14 minutes and 20 seconds worth of sports talk to get you through your daily commute. Hot takes, recaps, best bets, and a little humor to get your day going in the right direction. Sit back, grab your coffee, and let's get into it. All right, 14:20 in the morning for this August the 9th, 2023. Today's show is brought to you by SeatGeek.com and the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today and save yourself $20 on your first purchase at SeatGeek.com today and help support the 1420 Sports Bar podcast and all its shows. Remember, we are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Go to bellyupsports.com to check out all their great articles and on all sports that are going on out there right now and all the great podcasts out there, including the Corner Booth podcast and the Crap Brewed Sports, which I'm going to catch up later on today. I've been on the highway a little bit for the last week, so I haven't been able to get the show out to you guys on a daily basis. I was out in Havre, Montana. For those of you who know me, I was umpiring the Northwest Class A Regional Baseball Tournament down there in Havre. Had a great time down there. But the schedule, we're going to try to get it back right, get it going, starting tomorrow night back with Dave and get the 1420 Sports Bar podcast back on its regular times on Mondays and Thursday nights, and then get it out to your guys' ears. Thank you very much for those of you who've been listening to the show while we've been away in our brief hiatus. Well, a lot has happened in the world of sports since I've been off the air and not getting the broadcast and my thoughts and shots about the what's been going on in the world of sports since I think it was last Wednesday where I recorded one of these things, or maybe it was Thursday. I can't much remember. It doesn't much matter. Lots been going on in the world of sports. Some things that really caught my eyeballs a lot, and one of them was the basically the last nail in the coffin for the Pac-12 conference. Conference that's near and dear to my heart since I'm out here on the west-ish coast, I guess. And the USC Trojans are my college football team, and actually the only football team that I actually follow. Since you guys know my thoughts about the NFL and everything else, but the Pac-12 conference has basically called it good with the Washington and Oregon decided to leave, as well as Arizona State, Coach Prime and his California Buffaloes are going to be leaving, as well as the Oregon Ducks and the Washington Huskies are going to the joining the Big Ten. It was a sad day, I think, for a once proud Conference of Champions, it's called, and we all know it's about money, and we all know what the deals are in the Big Ten network and everything that goes along with college sports, and how the rich just keep getting richer. But it's sad to see the once proud conference of the Pac-12 gone and saying see you later, bye-bye, and going the way of the dodo bird, leaving a few teams still in the lurch, what they're going to be doing with Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and the like. So you wonder what's going to happen there. And it's really a strange situation that they got going on there with the Pac-12. It's an odd situation going on there, how it's all going to work out. But right now you have Oregon, Oregon, USC, UCLA, and joining the Big Ten next year. So that's going to be a situation. Who knows what's going to happen there? And then you have to make it it's a 16-team super conference now. The Big Ten is going to be. So the math isn't really there very, very well. Who knows what's going to happen there? And then you have the Arizona and the like joining the Big 12 to have a Big 18 or 16. I can't even remember the math's going all right. And we all know that college sports and college academics with the athletics isn't all about academics per se. So, but could the higher ups please get the math right on these? If you add 4 to 12, that's 16, and if you add 6 to 12, that's 18, and so that's just how math works. So it's why it's the Big Ten still. I have no idea. I understand that the athletes they aren't pushed academically a whole bunch, but could the higher ups please get this right and have it going? What I think should happen with the Big Ten, I think this one is pretty. It's a mind-blowing thought that I was having just as I was reading about the Pac-12 disbanding, and I had this mind-blowing thought that came into my head that I don't know how it got past the higher ups in the Big Ten world and the Pac-12 world. But I thought since you have USC, UCLA, and Oregon already joining, and Washington, why wouldn't you just get Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford to join the Big Ten as well, and then do something as crazy as thinking, why don't we have a Big Ten West or a Big Ten Pacific conference? Okay, let's call it that, the Big Ten Pacific, and then you have the Big Ten East, whatever you want to call it. I know it's mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. We'll have those two divisions in your conference, and then have a few intra-division games where you would have, say, Ohio State play UCLA and USC one year, and then you would have Michigan play Oregon and Oregon State one year, and on it goes, and then have Stanford play against Northwestern, or then you would have Cal play, and on that would go. Have some intra-division games, and then you would still have some crazy thing called the Pac-12 the Pacific Division of the Big Ten. So you would have USC playing UCLA. You would still have the USC Stanford game. Then USC would still have their one game against Notre Dame that they play every year, because that one's not going away because of the big TV dollars. So you have these two divisions inside the Big Ten, one on the Pacific, one on the East. Pretty simple stuff, not hard to follow. Then to blow everyone's mind, in January, what you would do, because the weather's a little nicer in California, it's more of a destination spot in January than Indianapolis, Indiana is, have the Big Ten conference championship game in this sunny location called Pasadena, California. Do it around like 4 o'clock Eastern, or 4 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 3 o'clock Pacific Time, which is 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Have this game and call it the Big Ten championship game at the Rose Bowl. So then you have these two factions who are playing each other that would decide the Big Ten championship. It's a crazy idea and a crazy thought. I understand that. So then you have the Pacific Conference playing the Eastern Conference in this thing called the Rose Bowl, or the Big Ten championship at the Rose Bowl. The same thing that it is now. Just leave it. Just do it the same way it was for 100 years before conference realignment, the conference championships and the playoffs, and on it goes. Have that, and then you have your Big Ten your Big Ten conference champion, and you're actually going back in reverse to how it was when it was great. Big Ten playing the Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl every New Year's Day. So just do the exact same thing you were doing 10 years ago. Swallow up those 4 other teams that I mentioned, and find 2 more. Take Boise or Fresno State or whoever. What? Find 2 more teams on the West Coast, because I don't think the Arizona State's, Colorado, I don't think that they belong in a super conference. They can go to the Big 12, and it's more regional that way. But you have a Big Ten Pacific, and you have a Big Ten East, and then it's done. And then they play on New Year's Day in the Rose Bowl like they had been doing for 100 years prior to this. I know it's a crazy idea and a crazy thought that came out of 1420 World Headquarters, but that's what they should do. That's a very simple solution, and I cannot believe that the higher-ups in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 haven't thought of this, because this can't be a Brent original. If it is, I want to get paid for this idea. It's absolutely asinine to me that they can't see the forest through the trees on this situation. That's one thing that happened in the world of sports this week. Another thing that kind of came across the airwaves was Aaron Boone went on his little, it always comes back to the Yankees a little bit, but this is more not a Yankee thing as much. Well, he managed the Yankees, but Aaron Boone went on his once a year diatribe, or once a year temper tantrum to an umpire, where it's the savages in the box, and this is a ball, this is a strike. And the other night, Laz Diaz was the focus of his attention. Diaz was having a rough night behind the plate, and Boone didn't like it. It took him to the 8th inning to show some emotion. His players were getting screwed the entire game, but it took Aaron Boone to the 8th to go and confront Mr. Diaz about his strike zone. And I'm not a guy to, because I'm an umpire, so I'm not a guy to, obviously, to amateur umpires, having coaches, managers, players throw a temper tantrum to umpires, but at the professional level, I don't see anything wrong with it. I like the passion that managers show. I just wish Boone would show it a little bit earlier. Maybe if his passion got put on Giancarlo Stanton last Saturday when Stanton was pretending to run home on that double when he was at second base, he probably should have scored. I would have scored on that play, but whatever. But Boone showed us some great emotion, great entertainment, to say the least. He drew the line in the dirt, was behind the mound on his hands and knees, and then he came up and did a perfect, like what I think was a perfect Laz Diaz impersonation. That was the mechanics were great. The Laz Diaz issue, I thought it was fantastic. I just wish that Boone would show that emotion more often. When he's allowed to show that kind of emotion on a daily basis, he'll probably get suspended and the like, and everything's going to happen. But I don't think that Boone was in the wrong. I kind of miss those days of baseball when you'd have arguments before instant replay, and you're going to see less and less arguments from managers once they go to the automated strike zone in Major League Baseball. It's good to see, and because it was Aaron Boone, it's a Yankee-centric thing, but when any manager goes off on an umpire like that and adds some umpire and adds some flair to the game that can add entertainment and everything else, I think that was a really, really good thing for baseball, and it was entertaining. There's no getting around that. It was something to see, and if you haven't checked out, maybe I'll find it. I'll piece something together. The Laz Diaz strike three mechanics compared to the Aaron Boone strike three mechanic. It was one and the same, so it's fun to watch. I just hope the Yankees can find a little bit of emotion out of that. I think that they're dead in the water. They're not going anywhere fast. There's a lot of other things going on in Yankee land that they're dead in the water, but maybe we'll do that on Friday with the State of the Union address with Yankee, or maybe I'll see if I can get a hold of the fan of the van, Jim Plotner, and we'll do something on Saturday. We'll get to talking about the Yankees at this point in the season with about 45 games left is all that's left in the season. But anyways, another thing that happened over the weekend that I found really entertaining, I think a lot of people did. Chicago White Sox shortstop Tim Anderson, he got himself a punch in the face, got locked stupider or more stupid, got knocked in the face. And like I said, I don't know, is it stupider or more stupid? I don't know. But Tim Anderson, he got one from Ramirez. I think it was warranted 100%. He was being a bit of a dickhead, standing over top of Ramirez at second base on a pick attempt, I think it was, or a steal, whatever it might be. And then Anderson flicked his hat, and then the fight ensued. And then he threw a couple punches, but Ramirez, which was shocking to me that it took Ramirez to get the guy, because he seems like a pretty even keel guy. He said he kind of recanted it today a little bit with an apology to Anderson, but when Ramirez clocked him and punched him, I think it was it showed exactly what kind of guy Anderson is. He's been suspended 3 or 4 other times, and he says some pretty disparaging things all the time out there in Chicago. And he's probably one of the bigger nozzles in all of professional sports, not just in baseball. He's kind of an idiot and everything else. There's problems in Chicagoland. It isn't getting any better there. It's kind of a ridiculous situation. There was a relief pitcher who said that they have no culture there and no rules in Chicago. Maybe that's why they're in last place, I think, in that division. If not last, they'll be awfully close. It's sorry to see that the way that once proud franchise has got, but Anderson, he got what he deserved. He got punched in the face, and that was one of those things you kind of saw it coming. And Ramirez, like I said, he was probably seems to be one of the nicer guys in all of baseball. And the thing about this suspension, like the Cleveland Guardians, I got it right, guys. The Cleveland Guardians are in a playoff hunt right now, so this 3 games might come up as a big thing, because as we know, Ramirez is by far their best player there in Cleveland, and you wonder what is going to happen with the Guardians playoff spot. I know it's not just one guy for 3 games, but it can become a situation where he's not going to be around for 3 games. It might be pivotal, because at this point, every win matters. Like those wins in April, every game matters, and winning every game, and you don't have your best player, it makes it a little bit tough. That one spot in the lineup, a base hit here, a base hit there can matter, or a defensive play when you're playing a guy that you don't know what you're getting. And with Anderson being out of the lineup, I don't think the Chicago White Sox care a whole bunch. They played without him before. He doesn't seem to care if he plays or not, and the White Sox are a team of disarray. So having him sit out 6 games, he'll appeal it, and he'll get it anyways. But it's one of those things. I don't think it's a bad thing that he's out of the out of the game at all. It doesn't hurt the White Sox. The White Sox are an embarrassment to baseball. But it's kind of one of those things that you're watching the world of sports that was going on. And then the last one that kind of caught my eye, I think, was on Sunday or whatever it was, when the White Sox or the Baltimore Orioles announcer, Kevin Brown, he got suspended by the Orioles because now the Orioles are going to Oriole no matter what. I'm not going to get too deeply into this because a friend of the show, Jim Plotner, the fan of the band, he had a great take on one of his shows this week. I think it was on Tuesday. He put that on. I got lost in days there, but Jim had a great take on basically on announcers and not a freedom of speech and everything else. It's not a political thing by any means, but how announcers should be able to say what they want about their team. And the thing about this thing, and I'll get off this subject right in a second here about Kevin Brown, is that not only yes, it might have been his idea to talk about it. I don't know. I haven't read up a whole bunch on it, but he has a producer that has to approve of what they're going to say, because the producer has to go to the graphics guy and the script has to be written, and on it goes. So Kevin Brown was just the voice of this whole situation. He wasn't the one who came. He might have come up with the idea, but it takes a whole group of people to put things together. This isn't 1420 World Headquarters where I do all these for myself in the mornings, the graphics, everything else. It's other people have to be involved in the production of these baseball games on a daily basis. So for Kevin Brown to be the scapegoat for this whole thing, and then he wasn't saying anything derogatory. He just said that the Tampa Bay Rays kind of own the Baltimore Orioles, and the Orioles lost the game last night. On it goes. But for him to be suspended, and the crowd was getting on to people last night, and for the crowd to do that was really nice for them to be behind Kevin Brown. But it's just a thing, like Jim explains a lot better than I did. Well, he goes into more detail than I did, but it's a shitty way for a baseball team to handle their broadcast crew and the way it goes. And it just shows that we're all pawns in this great big game for the money guys, and for him to be because it's not people are going to watch Orioles baseball, especially because they're hot right now. So they can really do no wrong. The place was pretty full last night. I'm sure television ratings are up. So for Peter Angelos to suspend this guy, it was bad timing, obviously, but it's just a bad look for censorship, I guess. And we don't want to get political and all on freedom of speech and the First Amendment, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But it was just a bad look for the Orioles, who can't seem to get out of their own way off the field. The off the field stuff is kind of overshadowing the on field stuff a little bit, so it's kind of odd that they would even go there with that and talk about things that way. So it's just a bad look for the Orioles. But anyways, it's been a great week of sports that I was not able to watch a whole bunch, but there were some highlights that I thought I would bring up, give you my take on some of the things that carried on in the world of sports on this day, on this August the 9th, 2023. When we get to or on this day and birthdays here, it's kind of a funny day, and I got a little funny story to talk about. But remember our 1420 Sports Bar podcast, part of the Belly Up Media Network, and remember to go to bellyupsports.com, and also make sure you support our sponsor, because they support us at SeatGeek.com, the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today. Here's a little word from our sponsors at SeatGeek.
SeatGeek is the ticketing app for fans like Boomstick Lady. No free throw is safe from the roar of her sticks. SeatGeek helps her find a seat in the direct eye line of the shooter, so she can sit where her boomsticks make the biggest boom. Everybody okay? SeatGeek handles the tickets to sports, concerts, and more, so fans can fan.
All right, on this day, I remember this one vividly. If you're of my age or a little bit younger, but my age or older, everybody knows where. Especially if you're Canadian, everybody knows on this day in 1988, the Edmonton Oilers traded the great one, Wayne Gretzky, the Los Angeles King, for a package of players and $15 to $20 million in cash. Peter Pawkin had some failing businesses up here in Alberta. Gainers was one of them. Gainers Meats was one, and a bunch of underhanded deals that didn't go so good. So it was Gretzky, Mike Krosniewski, and Marty McSorty going to LA and going back to Edmonton. Jimmy Carson, Martin Jelena, 3 first overall draft picks, a bunch of cash, $15-20 million, and on it goes. But it was one of those things, you remember exactly where you were that day. It's one of those things that people know no matter what. I was in Windsor, Ontario at the Canadian Little League Championships, swimming in a pool, and the coach for the Windsor Little League team, he came by. He says, "How do you Alberta boys feel about Gretzky getting traded?" And I was 14 years old. I think it was 13 or 14. And I told the coach to F off. And I was, my mom was quite shocked that something would come out of her little boy's mouth talking about Wayne Gretzky getting traded when I was 14 years old. And it was one of those things. I remember exactly where it was, exact reaction. I was not an Oilers fan back then, but you see Gretzky getting traded in the press conference that happened, and on it went. It was quite the day, and there was a lot of people to blame for it, but Pocklington was behind it. McNall had some deep pockets. That was also crooked dealings, and everybody was blaming Gretzky's wife at that point, or they just got married a few weeks earlier, and only about 4 months after the Oilers, or 3 months after the Oilers won the Stanley Cup. And so people were blaming Janet Jones for the breakup and the trade because she wanted to be in LA and not Edmonton. None of that couldn't be further from the truth. It was just one of those deals that Gretzky got traded for money, and so it goes. Gretzky has changed the landscape of hockey. There's no getting around that. The growth of hockey in Southern United States would not have happened without that trade in 1988. And like I said, it was one of those, every Canadian knows where they were this day if you were alive in 1988. It's one of those you know exactly where you were moments. So this day in sports history, the biggest trade in hockey history was made. Maybe the biggest trade in sports history. I can't think of anyone that would be any bigger. Maybe if the Tom Brady trade and everything else, maybe, but it wasn't even a trade. He just re-signed somewhere else. So for Gretzky to get traded, the greatest hockey player to ever play the game, not the best, that's Connor McDavid, but the greatest hockey player to ever play the game was traded on this day. And it's one of those things, I don't know if it would ever happen. I mean, LeBron gets traded here and there and everywhere, signs here, there, and everywhere. So that's not really a surprise. But for a hockey deal with cash to be involved on this day, it was something to behold. And you wonder if it would ever happen again. Like with no trade deals, I'm sure Gretzky had a no trade because he had the chance to say no to it, but he said, you know what, maybe it's time to go. You want me gone, let's make it go. And the very first 30 for 30 is actually about the Gretzky trade, which is kind of odd considering ESPN isn't really a hockey network by any means, and their very first 30 for 30 was on the Gretzky trade. And it's a very great watch if you haven't watched that one yet. And on this day in 1964, Brett Hull was born in Belleville, Ontario. Hull was drafted in the 1984 NHL entry draft after scoring 105 goals and adding 83 assists for the Penticton Knights of the British Columbia Junior Hockey League, drafted by the Flames. Hull was traded to St. Louis during the 87-88 season to the St. Louis Blues. His career took off from that point on with Adam Oates by his side. He potted 86 goals in the 1990-91 season, one of the all-time greats. Hull finished his NHL career with 741 goals, 650 assists for 1,391 points with a whopping plus 23. You got to think with 741 goals, you have a better plus minus than plus 23, but one of those things. Anyways, remember 2 Stanley Cup championship teams, 99 in Dallas. The crease goal, if everyone remembers that year, was the crease was the thing of towing the crease. Hasek overtime celebration started before they go upstairs, but Hull was the one who scored the goal. And then he got one as well in 2002 in Detroit with that the best team that money could ever buy when people were calling Detroit to go there and be on have a chance to win a championship. So on this day in 1964, Brett Hull was born, and he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2009. Hull, one of the all-time greats, one of the all-time characters in sports. You wonder if he actually put the effort in how many goals he would have scored. But man, that guy could shoot the puck. The golden Brett, named after his father, the Golden Jet, Bobby Hull. Anyways, born on this day. So yeah, on this day in '83, if you listen to this show, I'll put a clip up there where you were, if you can remember, on this day in 1988 when Gretzky was traded, because it was one of the funnier moments. I remember it every year. Every year I remember exactly where it was. I probably tell the story every year, so now I do it for you guys where I was on this day in 1988. But no, thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for watching. If you're watching today on Facebook Live or YouTube and everything else, but more importantly, thanks to our listeners of the podcast that goes out to the airways all the time. Listen to some old shows. They don't really intertwine at all, so it's all different entertainment and different content on a daily basis. Gonna get a hold of Jim Plotner, the fan of the van. We'll talk some Yankees baseball maybe on Saturday. Aaron from Brutally Honest Sports, I want to get his take on the Baltimore Orioles situation and what he thinks, how they're going to go. And his Phillies are doing pretty good too. He's got 2 teams, which is fine because they're in the American League and National League, so you can actually, that's allowed. And we'll talk some baseball in the upcoming days. Back with Dave tomorrow night, Thursday night edition of the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. Jimmy Neutron will get that out for us on Friday, and then we'll get back on our regular schedule of Mondays and Thursdays recording with Dave and everything else. So thank you very much for listening to the show. We appreciate all the support you guys give us. If you're an umpire, make sure you listen to the roundtable we had with the guys from down in Montana State. We had a good time down in Havre, Montana, cracking a few beers and talking some baseball. It was a lot of fun. Anyways, that's it for today's show. Thank you very much for listening to the 1420 Sports Bar podcast and 1420 in the morning. And remember, doesn't matter where you are, it's who you're with. Have a good day, folks. We'll talk tomorrow morning. You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. 4 beer with the sports talk and a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.